Once you've ruled out the impossible, whatever remains, however improbable, must be true.
And it is not a question of a little occultism or a touch of mysticism, Mr. Denton. It is vampirism, and there's a host of damned souls at Pelham House.
Thy father's spirit, doomed for a certain term to walk the night.
Here, the old gods aren't dead.
And what of the true god?
He's dead. Can't complain.
People assume that time is a strict progression of cause to effect, but actually, from a non-linear, non-subjective viewpoint, it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
You're listening to Paranormal UK Radio.
Hello, everybody. This is Paranormal UK Radio, the flagship show of the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And I'm your host, Irene Allen Block. And with me tonight is my usual, the one and only, Marky Johnson.
Hello. Well, actually, It's not, I haven't been the one and only lately, have I?
Well, you're the only one and only Marky Johnson.
Well, that's true. But Andy Mercer has been sitting in for me lately.
In, doing a fantastic job as well, and he'll be back with me more than likely next week.
Yes, or later on in the show, since we are splitting this in half tonight. But because I've had some things going on with my work, so I've had to take a little step back. But I'm rectifying that, and we'll be moving forward.
Yeah, and it's been a lovely break for all of us, really, hasn't it, Mark?
I'm sure it has been.
But welcome back.
Well,
welcome
thank
back.
You. Well, I hope you had a good holiday.
I did. Me and Andy, we done all right. We had a good time. So, I've got to admit, I did miss you. I did miss you a little bit, but it was relaxing as well, not to have you bellowing in my ear. All right.
See the abuse I have to put up with, everybody.
No, everybody's missed you.
Yeah.
Everybody.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
Gertie especially.
We've got a special show tonight, and we've got a very unique guest, and so we're going to go ahead and get right into it, because he's going to spend the first hour here with us. Our guest tonight is Dick Larson. Now, Dick is going to be talking with us about a very unusual subject, something I'm very intrigued about. So, Dick, welcome to the program.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Hello, Dick.
Hi, Irene.
Hiya.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then talk to us about. I know I'm gonna butcher it. Is it Maitreya?
Maitreya.
Okay.
Maitreya.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became connected with Maitreya, and what this means for us.
Sure. Well, let's start out with myself. It's not about me, but I will tell you a little bit about myself. I live in Southern California in the United States, just below Los Angeles, and I am recently retired. I was a businessman for over 20 years, and then I became a counselor and worked with folks who get themselves addicted to drugs and alcohol. And I ran a treatment program here in Southern California for several years and really, really enjoyed that. And then I became a teacher at a local college and taught adults how to be drug counselors. And then I retired from that job. So I've had a couple careers, 3 career fields at least. And I heard about this information that we're going to be talking about from a man named Benjamin Creme. His last name is spelled C-R-E-M-E. It looks like cream, but it's Creme. He was from London, and he would travel the world. For over 40 years, he traveled around the world, including a stop in New York, Los Angeles, and San Francisco, to give lectures about this information that we're going to be talking about today. Mm-hmm. And it was suggested I go to one of his lectures, so I did about 25 years ago. And most of what he said went right over my head, so I want your listeners to fasten their seatbelts. This is going to be information that many of them may not have heard before. Some of your London residents may have heard of this. But in any event, I loved what I understood. And so I started reading his books. He's got about 15 books, maybe a little more than that, on Amazon.com. I'm not here to sell books, but just in case people want to check them out, they can do that. And so I'm a volunteer for an organization that he started called Share International, S-H-A-R-E International. It is a worldwide nonprofit educational organization trying to get the word out about the hope for the future and the information that Benjamin Creme was able to pass on to the world without any pay for, like I said, about 40 years. Benjamin Creme was taught how to be in contact with one of the ascended masters or the masters of wisdom. There are many names for these great beings who have inspired humanity over the eons behind the scenes for humanity's great advances over the years.
Dick,
yes,
sorry.
That's okay. Interrupt me anytime.
Does he channel this master?
Well, that's a good question. Actually, no. I need to do a short explanation to answer that accurately. Most philosophies and religions of the world agree that humanity is made up of four aspects. In ascending order of evolution, they're physical, emotional, which is also called astral, mental, and spiritual. So humanity is made up of physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual energies. And the astral and emotional is at a lower level than the mental. So astral contact is not as reliable as mental telepathy because, as you know, feelings change. When we make big decisions based on our feelings and then we change our feelings, oh no, why did I do that? How am I going to make that right? Well, the mind does not change. So people that channel can get some pretty good information, but some of it can be slightly inaccurate. It's hard to get it just right. Whereas mental telepathy, which is what Benjamin Creme was trained in, is absolutely accurate to the comma and the period. I mean, he got so good at it that he was in contact with his master 24 hours a day, 7 days a week if he wanted to be. So he was placed in contact with one of these great beings, and that's where most of Benjamin Creme's information came from. Mm-hmm. He could have been a great teacher on his own because he was a very educated, knowledgeable man.
Sorry about that. Mental telepathy, ESP?
Yes. ESP.
That's it.
Yes, but it's more than perception. It's a communication. It's a communication. So it's a step beyond ESP, actually. It's actual mental communication. He said he would hear his master would wake him up in the morning to get the day started. And he said when he'd be sleeping, he'd hear his master's voice. At first, it was very loud in his head. He said, I couldn't ignore it. He'd say, get up, Creme, we're going to the park today. He called him Creme. And so he heard his master's voice very clearly, and then he could respond with thought to his master. So they had this open communication, which got more and more refined over the years, but that's where his information came from. And people ask me what the source of my information, if I may just tell you that real quickly. The source of my information is Benjamin Creme and something called the Ageless Wisdom. The Ageless Wisdom is a philosophy, not a religion. It's kind of a living philosophy about life and why we're here and what our purpose is and so on. And it's as old as humanity. It's been passed down over the eons, and when humanity's ready for more information, more was released. The last two revealers of the Ageless Wisdom was a woman named Alice A. Bailey, who wrote about 20 books in the 1930s and 40s. Some of them are very difficult to understand. I would recommend people check out Benjamin Creme's writings and his teachings. Now, Benjamin Creme passed away a couple of years ago in his 90s, but he's got wonderful information out there. It's relatively easy to understand, and he's the latest revealer of the Ageless Wisdom.
Wait. So just so I understand, so Benjamin Creme has passed away?
Yes, he has.
Okay.
He passed away in 2016 at age 94.
Okay.
Wonderful man.
So with these, so he was in contact with this ascended master, Maitreya, who was...
No, not Maitreya. One of the other masters. There are 63 masters connected with Earth's evolution. He was in contact with one of the other masters, and we don't know the name of that master.
Okay. Now, here's a question. The reason I'm going to be asking some questions, and I hope you don't take this as any kind of criticism or I'm trying to trip you up in any way, because I'm genuinely interested in learning, and I do come from, a paranormal and research background. So when he is channeling and dealing with this ascended master and started talking to him, was he doing his own types of meditation, or how did it come about that this supposed master started contacting him, and how did he feel confident that what he was receiving was genuine?
Right.
And again, the reason I ask that is because being dealt with enough in the paranormal that sometimes things that come through, you can't always trust who they are. They say they are who they say they are.
Right. No, I understand that. Benjamin Creme, yes. To answer your question, he did lots of meditation. He studied the Alice Bailey writings. He studied theosophy. He was a multifaceted intellectual, but primarily he was an artist. He's got some beautiful art, mostly spiritual art, and I don't know if the world is ready for it yet. But we have a Benjamin Creme Museum here in Los Angeles now, and there'll probably be others around the world as time goes on. But in any event, he did all this work ahead of time, and then he was contacted by a man who talked to him and said, one of the masters are trying to reach you. And Benjamin Creme said, no, I don't think so. I haven't heard anything, been aware of anything. And he said, well, you need to get more focused because it's bouncing off you. And so Benjamin Creme did. He prepared for this, and then he finally received communication, and he answered back to see what kind of response it would get. And it became clear to him that this was one of the masters. Then he was actually contacted by Maitreya himself. Now, Maitreya said, I've got work for you to do if you want to. Only if you want to, and only if you're willing to do it, and you will be contacted by one of the masters later if you want to do that. Benjamin Creme said, okay, great. I think I would be willing to do that. And then he heard nothing for over a decade. And then this man came to him and said, one of the masters have been trying to contact you. And so then he started communicating with this master. And Benjamin Creme said, that master has not told me one thing that didn't turn out to be true. Not one. And whenever Benjamin Creme asked a question, he got back a very reasonable, logical answer. And so he was convinced over the 40-plus years of communicating with this individual that it was one of the masters. The information was just too exact and too unknown to everybody else.
Now, so with the information that was coming through from Maitreya, I guess I have to ask, because I'm not familiar with Maitreya. And tell us a little bit about Maitreya and his importance, his or her importance.
Absolutely. I'm happy to do that. I do want to say one more thing to your audience, though, and that is I have a request. Besides trying to keep an open mind, because this will be new information to so many people, the other thing I ask is please don't believe anything I say. Because that would be blind belief, and I can't recommend blind belief to anybody. I'm not here to convince your listeners that what I say is true. I'm just here to give out my information, and if 10 or 20 or 30% of it makes sense to some of your listeners, I'll be really happy with that. So I'm not here to argue with anybody or to try and cram information down anybody's throat and get them to think like I think. Not at all. So I want you to know that. Now, Maitreya. I mentioned that there are 63 ascended masters or masters of the wisdom. They're also called the Lords of Love, the Lords of Compassion, the hierarchy of spiritual masters. There are 63 of these great beings who have gone through evolution, human evolution here on Earth, ahead of us. And so they've gone through human evolution. They've had thousands of lifetimes, as we are having, and they finally learned all the lessons of planet Earth can teach them. And they have graduated from this school of planet Earth and no longer need to come in a body, and because there's no more for them to learn. So now this was demonstrated by Jesus when he resurrected from the dead and ascended. He showed us where we're all going to go, because we're all ultimately going to become perfected human beings like these masters of wisdom are. And then we're not going to need bodies anymore, and we'll become permanent consciousness or spirits. And the master's consciousness resides in the deserts and mountain regions of the world. They're not in what people would think of as heaven. There's really no heaven and really no hell. They're states of mind. But the masters, there are 63 of them. When you become a master, you can take one of 7 paths, and only one of those paths is the path of earth service. You can go on to Sirius or other paths. Well, these 63 have chosen to stick around planet Earth and serve humanity behind the scenes. They are at different levels of evolution, just like human beings are at. We're all at different levels of evolution. They are at different levels too. That's why they're called a hierarchy of masters. They have a leader, and their leader's name is Maitreya, Maitreya. Maitreya means the happy one, the one who brings joy. And he is the leader. He says, call me the teacher or the world teacher. Benjamin Creme called him the world teacher because that's what he is. He's going to come to us as a teacher. And so he is the leader, the head of the spiritual hierarchy for planet Earth, and he is the leader of the masters. He is coming himself in person soon. And by soon, I used to say 10 years, then I said within 5 years. Now I'm saying within 2 years. Now, this is not official. This is my best estimate of when Maitreya will appear on worldwide television and radio to all of humanity, so all ears can hear and all eyes can see, as predicted. And I'm saying that'll happen within the next 2 years. He will appear to all of humanity. He is in a physical body that he made. It's a male body. He can't be destroyed. He doesn't need to eat or sleep. He works 24 hours a day. His base of operations, Mark, is London. That's where he has his home outpost. It's in the Asian community in London, but he appears around the world whenever he wants to, wherever he wants to. The masters travel by thought. So a master can appear in 20 places at once and be real enough to shake your hand.
Well, Dick,
and they can appear as anybody they want to, which Maitreya has been doing a lot.
Okay, so just so I can understand, has Maitreya physically incarnated, or as he materialized? I mean, I'm trying to understand. So you're saying, is he here now? He
materialized a body. It's the first time it's ever been done.
Right.
He made a body. It took him years up in the Himalayas where he was residing. He made a physical body to use for this mission. He'll be walking amongst humanity for the next 2,000 years, making suggestions, giving advice, and then we have free will. We can either follow it or not. So he made this body. Then he came down out of the mountains into Pakistan and kind of did a test drive of his body for about 10 days, 2 weeks, to make sure that it worked like he hoped it would, and that he could shake people's hand without his energy zapping them to death, things like that. The masters aren't used to smog and noise pollution and air pollution and water like we are. So he had to come down and make sure his body functioned like he hoped it would, and it did. So then what he did, Mark, to fulfill a prophecy, he flew from Pakistan to London to fulfill the prophecy that he would come out of the clouds. And of course, when they made that prophecy, they didn't know about airplanes, but he did. His passport said he was 33 years old when he made this trip. He's about 6'3", as I understand it. He's in a male body. I've never seen the body that he made yet. I've seen Maitreya several times. It was confirmed by Benjamin Creme's master, but not in the body that we're going to see him in on television. Okay, and that he's going to be in for the next 2,000 years, traveling around the planet.
So have you been in contact with Maitreya?
I have.
Okay, so he has contacted you by telephone, email?
Well, actually, and almost always in person. And I'm not the only one. There's nothing special about me. I need to make that clear. He's appeared to hundreds, if not thousands, of people around the world over the last 30 years. Now, his base of operations is in London. There's a master. There are 14 masters in the world in major cities. There's one in Rome. That's the Master Jesus. He is back. He's in a physical body. And his job, as I understand it, will be to be the head of the Christian church worldwide and get the Christian church back on track, because all the major religions have lost their way. So he and Maitreya work hand in hand all the time. They're best buddies, and they've been appearing to people together and separately for the last 30 years. Now, I saw Maitreya as a homeless man. I saw Jesus as a homeless man. I saw Jesus as a guy shopping in a grocery store right next to me. Now, these are all confirmed. What happens is, if you think you've seen a master, you write to Share International Magazine, which is a monthly international magazine. It's in about 40 countries and in different languages. Benjamin Creme was the chief editor of that, and people would write in letters and say, here's what happened. Was it a master? And then Benjamin Creme would ask his master, and if it was, then his master would confirm who exactly it was they saw. And then Benjamin Creme would publish that letter in the magazine and print the response. And so that's how I found out that I had seen Maitreya and Jesus several times.
Well,
Jesus appeared to me as a young girl once when I was working in a Share International booth. We have a booth to give out information. It was a book fair in Los Angeles, downtown Los Angeles, and I was there at the Share International booth, and this little girl came up to me and started talking to me. It turned out she was Jesus.
Well, and did you find that out after the fact or later on?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I had a suspicion. I'll tell you why. Maitreya put his handprint on a mirror in Spain in a woman's house, and she wiped it off. She thought her son had done it. Then she went into her bathroom later, and there was another one on her bathroom mirror, and she thought, okay, I'm not going to erase this one, wipe this one off, because something's going on. Her son knew about Benjamin Creme. He took a photo of the handprint. It's like a three-dimensional handprint. It's quite amazing. And he sent it to Benjamin Creme, and Benjamin Creme confirmed that it was Maitreya's handprint. Well, we printed them out on cards, big cards about, 8 by 10, not quite, 6 by 10. And then we hand them out at these booths, and she took the hand. I gave it to her. I didn't tell her what it was. And Maitreya is the Christ for our planet. Jesus is called the Christ, but I can explain that if you'd like me to in a minute. But Maitreya is the Christ. It's a position in hierarchy in the spiritual kingdom. It's a position of Christ for our planet, and he is the Christ for our planet. And Jesus, the little girl, looked at this photograph, and she said something I didn't understand, so I bent down, and she said, "This is the hand of the Christ." And I said, "Yes, how did you know that? That's amazing." Well, then I got suspicious that she might be somebody special, so I wrote to Benjamin Creme, and he told me that was the Master Jesus.
Okay.
There are three ways. You've probably seen a master. If you're interviewing me, and you guys are, you have probably seen a master. And I'll tell you that's just been my experience when I do interviews. And I'll tell you there's three ways, the three most common ways that people know they've seen one of the masters. Number one, there's something in the eyes that's really special. Their eyes look really deep, or they look really penetrating, or they're extraordinarily beautiful. Something about the eyes. That's the first tip-off. The second way that people know they've seen a master is all of a sudden they're happy. They're just so filled with joy they can't, and nothing has happened to make them that happy, but they're just filled with joy. Both of these have happened to me. It's an amazing feeling. You're so happy, and you go, why am I so happy? All I did was look at her, and she looked at me for like 3 seconds. And now I'm feeling this incredible joy. That's the second way you know you've seen a master. And the third way you know you've seen a master is it's a very ordinary occurrence. I saw a homeless man in the park, but I couldn't get him out of my mind. If you can't get the experience out of your mind, you may not have even talked to each other, but you just keep thinking of them. You probably saw a master.
I was just going to say, Irene, are you sure that Christ didn't show you and Brian how to get to the airport that time?
Well, I am beginning to think, well, yeah.
Well, let me tell you
Dick, I had something happen to me where I could not get this man out of my mind.
Okay. That was
for over a week. And
did he help you?
He helped me.
Yep,
I'll tell you the quick version, okay?
Please.
Right. My cousin in Scotland died, and I had to get to the airport to fly up that day for the funeral.
I'm sorry.
I was flying up. This was after Christmas last year. It's about a year ago. But I had to get there to fly up and back in one day. So I was attending the funeral in Glasgow, and then I was flying straight back home again. Well, the nearest airport for the plane for Glasgow was Bristol Airport, about 90 miles away from here.
Okay.
So me and my husband were driving along, and we turned off the motorway, heading to Bristol Airport, and we got lost in the country lanes. 4:00 in the morning. It was in the middle of winter. It was January. It was freezing cold. There was a mist everywhere. There was no houses, just country lane, no lights, no nothing. And all of a sudden, I was panicking because I knew I had to be on that aeroplane.
Right.
All of a sudden, out of nowhere walks this man. Okay? So I said, Stop. Ask him the way. Ask him for directions. So we stopped the car, and he came over, and we asked him how to get to the airport, and he said, I'll show you. I can't tell you, but I'll show you. And he climbed in the car before we could even respond. Now, all the way to the airport.
Were you afraid?
No.
That's
but
perfect.
I thought I had this strange feeling about him that he was not real.
Yes.
There was something weird about him.
Yep.
Anyway, he didn't talk about anything except directions. Turn right here, turn left there, go through this village, go here. And he got us to the airport. So we were heading for the short stay car park. And he said, you can let me out of here. And we said, well, how are you going to get back? Because we travelled about 20 miles. This was 4:00 in the morning. This was an old man. Okay? He said, don't worry. So and I looked at my husband. When we looked back, he disappeared. There was nowhere he could have gone. Totally nowhere he could have gone to. We would have seen him in the distance if he had walked away. But he'd vanished, okay?
Yep.
A week later, it's still nagging me. I talked to my husband about it. I said, what did you see that night? So he gives a description of what he saw, and his description of the man was totally different to mine, even down to the colour of the clothes they were wearing.
Yep.
He was wearing.
Yep.
So, people said to me, it must be a guardian angel making sure that you're going to get to the funeral. Well, whoever it was, I was thankful to them anyway.
Yes. Well, I'll tell you, my response, Mark, I'm so glad you asked her to tell this story. Thank you. I'll tell you my response. That is an absolute perfect example of contact with one of the masters. Here's what they do.
Point is, Dick, right, what was an old man of about 80-odd years old doing 4:00 in the morning on a country road miles from nowhere?
Who appeared out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Yes, that's right. And he disappeared. The minute he got out of your car, he disappeared. That's exactly what the masters will do. And the other thing is they impress your mind with who they are and what they are. So he impressed you with one image of a man. He impressed your husband. He wanted you to know he was Maitreya. And I suspect he knew we were going to be talking. And he impressed your husband with another image of the man. And both of you thought it was just as real as could be. And it was for you. But that's what the masters do. They often appear when people are distressed and they need help. They have pulled people out of burning cars and then disappeared. They do that kind of stuff all the time. And it's perfect that he came out of nowhere and that he rode with you and said, don't worry about it, got out and disappeared. And that you both saw him differently. And that all he did was help you. He didn't add anything to it. He didn't try to sell you a bill of goods or give you any information.
No, God knows how. But by the time we got to the airport, it was 5 o'clock? Yeah, about 5 o'clock. God knows where because even the buses wouldn't have started, I doubt, at that time in Bristol, but not at Bristol Airport. Anyway, but You know,
My
to
guess
me,
is that-
he looked like his hair was sticking up in the air. He looked like he'd been dragged through a bloody bush.
Yes.
And my husband, he was well groomed with his hair perfect and neat cut and everything. Not to me.
And the other key was that even though he looked like that to you, Irene, you weren't afraid of him. People are never afraid of a master. As a matter of fact, when people see angels, like sometimes people will be dying and they'll see an angel at the foot of their bed or whatever, that's never an angel. You can't see angels, according to Benjamin Crimm's master. That is always a master. The masters appear as an angel because they know that we won't be afraid. Well, that's the same thing that happens to people that have an experience of one of the masters. They're never afraid of them, ever. The masters just reassure us that everything's going to be okay, and then we're calm about it. That was a perfect example. My thinking was it was Maitreya because it happened in the UK and his base of operations is London.
Well, I had one when I was a little girl as well in a country lane when I was about 7 years old.
Happens a lot.
But he was dressed as a monk, but there was no monastery anywhere around there.
I love it. A friend of mine had a vision of a master when he was about 6.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Benjamin Crimm's master confirmed that it was legitimate. So they've been doing this in the past, but they've been doing it a lot more the last 20 years, 20 to 30 years. Well, and there's wonderful stories in Share International every month. There are 5 to 10 stories, letters from people who have had a genuine experience of a master, and they'll appear in all different ways. And I'm sure that's what you had, especially with your sense of knowing that he seemed like somebody who was somebody else.
Well, let me ask what's going to sound like a really basic, simple question, but I'm curious. What would be the difference between an angel and an ascended master? I mean, we're talking about 2 different types of entities?
Yes, we are. There's a physical material, a physical above gas. Our science is limited. We only know physical matter to be in solid, liquid, and gas. But there's a level above gas that's an even higher vibration, a finer material. The Ageless Wisdom calls it etheric physical. Etheric physical. It's like gas. It's like oxygen. You can't see it. You can't smell it. You can't touch it. But we know it's real. Well, this etheric physical is also real. But you can't see it unless you have etheric vision. A few people do have etheric vision, but most of us don't. I don't. That's what angels are made of. They're made of etheric physical. You can't see them. Whereas the masters can appear to people at the drop of a hat anytime they want to. Maitreya, there was a story printed in the news, and Benjamin Crimm's master confirmed it, that about, 20 years ago, there was a Palestinian boy throwing rocks at one of the Israeli soldiers. And the Israeli soldier had just finally had enough of it, and he decided he was going to shoot this little boy, and he raised his rifle to shoot him, and immediately Maitreya appeared in front of the little boy, and the bullet fell harmlessly to the ground. And the soldier was so shocked, he threw down his rifle and ran away. That's how they can appear instantly. They always know what's going on. But here's the beauty of it, you guys. They never judge us. They never judge us because they were us. They've made all the mistakes we've made. And so they know what it's like to be us. So they don't judge us. They just love us and try to find ways to serve us. And that's what happened to you, Irene. You were served.
I've been served too, but that was for legal matters. Anyway,
you're great.
So,
great, Mark.
So Maitreya, or Maitreya, I'm going to pronounce it right. I swear, I'll work on it. Now is here and is going to be making an appearance. Now, why only Maitreya and not any of the other masters stepping forward?
Actually, it is the other masters, too. Remember I said there are 14 in the world now in physical bodies? He is their leader, so he will come forward first. They're not going to come forward until he does, openly to humanity. Now, Maitreya has been giving interviews as an ordinary man on television around the world. He's given interviews on, and I haven't seen any of them, but he's given interviews as an ordinary man. I don't know what name he uses or what he looks like, but he's appeared on network television in the U.S., done many interviews in Mexico and in Brazil and in Russia and in China. He's done over 200 at least interviews now. And here's what's going to happen. People are finally going to say, wait a minute. You know too much to be an ordinary man. Who are you really? Who are you really? The media representing humanity is going to say that to him at some point. And then he will have this day of declaration where he will appear on television. And because we asked him who he was, he can go ahead and tell us he's the world teacher for the age of Aquarius without infringing our free will. He is here with 13 other masters, and then the other masters will be introduced to the world.
Dick, is one of them a female?
Is one of them who?
A female?
I don't know. I don't know all of them.
Oh.
I can tell you a few. One is Mary, the mother of Jesus. She will be coming in a female. She'll be the first master in a female body in about 200 years.
Oh.
I'm told. But the other ones, Jesus is in Rome. There's a master in Geneva, in Darjeeling, in Tokyo, in New York, out here in California in the San Bernardino Mountains on the West Coast. There are masters all around the world, and there are people like Jesus, Krishna, Buddha isn't coming forward, Saint Germain. Joan of Arc is one of the great masters now. And then the biblical characters, John and Paul and Ringo. No, not Ringo, I'm kidding. but those are some of the masters. John for sure is coming, and I think Paul is coming forward too. He's the Master Hilarion now. They have different names now, but yes, we don't know who all of them are, but there are 14 here now, and they will be introduced after Maitreya introduces himself to humanity and talks to humanity for 25, 35, 45 minutes. Nobody knows how long or exactly when.
Well, I have two questions on that. First of all, these other masters, have they reincarnated in physical bodies, or did they manifest like Maitreya?
Most of them reincarnated in physical bodies.
Now, are they aware of who they are yet, or are some of them like living a life and then waiting for that time and then they get switched on, so to speak?
Yeah, no, they're in bodies that are 300, 400, 500 years old. Once they incarnate in a body, it doesn't age. See, they're masters over the sciences of our planet. We call them masters not because they're masters over us, but because they're masters over themselves and the sciences of planet Earth. So once they inhabit a human body, it doesn't age.
Oh, okay. So, Irene, how old are you really?
Okay, Irene. You've been busted.
No, I am 650 years old.
There you go.
And 32 days.
Oh, and what about seconds? Well, the other question with Maitreya,
can I just ask one?
All right, sure, go ahead. I'll hold mine.
Dick.
Yes.
These people, do they talk very highly intelligent, way above what their normal intelligence is?
Yeah.
Do you understand what I mean? Can they come out with stuff that no one else would even comprehend?
Yeah, that's a great question. Benjamin Creme has given an answer to that, and I have my own answer since I've talked to them several times. No, they talk just like your neighbor. Just like your neighbor.
No, what I mean is they talk just like your neighbor, like I'm talking to you now. But then there's occasionally a time when suddenly, something mind-blowing they can release.
I think what she's referring to is coming across with some really high concepts, or really high-level concepts.
Sure. They will tell truths that we have not been aware of before, absolutely, but they'll tell it in terms that we can understand it. I'll give you an example. The Buddha taught the wisdom of God. Jesus, the great teacher Jesus, taught the love of God. Maitreya, 2,000 years later, comes to teach the will of God. He says humanity is finally ready to seriously start doing God's will. I come to teach the will of God and the purpose behind that will. So that'll be something we don't know about. Yeah. It'll be new to us. But a lot of people will be leaning forward to hear it. I'll tell you, when somebody says, I'm going to teach you the will of God, and the tree is known by its fruit. A lot of people are going to say, no, look out for Maitreya. He's the Antichrist, all that kind of stuff. There's going to be a lot of that. But he has said that there are 2 billion people who will respond to him when he comes forward, and that's more than the critical mass he needs to start turning this planet around. See, the masters can't wave a magic wand and make everything okay because it's not their mess. We made the mess.
Well, that's it. We've all got free will. If we want to make a mess, we make a mess.
Yes, that's right.
That's
but now, by the law of karma, we're the ones that have to clean it up. So what they'll do is they can't force us. They won't force us to do anything because of the free will you just said, Irene. And so what they'll do is make suggestions, and they'll teach us. And they'll say, well, here are some ideas, and then we can either act on them or not. We have free will.
Yeah.
Well, you mentioned that it's for God's will. And I'm going to ask something very controversial here.
Sure.
Which God? Who's God? Or because when we talk about in Western society, dealing with either Judeo-Christian or Islam, single deities. They talk about God or Jehovah or Allah.
Yeah.
But then in other religions around the world, you're dealing with multi-deism, and even going back in history, it was not a monotheistic societies. They were multiple gods, multiple aspects. So, again, who are we talking about here? Are we talking about something that doesn't encompass any of that?
Well, when I say God, I don't mean a person, an old man with a long white beard sitting in a gold throne up in heaven. That's not what I mean. I mean, God has been defined in many ways. It's not a male, it's not a female. God is not a Christian or a Buddhist or a Jew. God is all the intelligence in the world, all the love in the world, all of the laws of life in the world, like karma, like rebirth, like gravity. God is the one who set all those laws up. So when I say God, I mean a consciousness that set this up and that has a plan. An overall plan for humanity. Now, let me just go one step further because that's a partial answer. Each planet has a God. Each planet has a great being that holds that planet in its mind so that the planet can exist. So each planet is a God, and that's who we pray to. We pray to the God for planet Earth, Jehovah, that God. That's the God of planet Earth. Now, we have a solar system. Earth is part of that system. There's a God for the solar system. Has a plan for the whole solar system. Then we have a constellation, the galaxy, the Milky Way galaxy. The Milky Way galaxy, which I can't even imagine how huge that is, there's a God in charge of a plan for that. So there's different levels of evolution on every level, from a dog to a human to a spiritual entity. To a consciousness. We're all at different levels of evolution. So the God that we pray to, that I talk about, is the God for planet Earth. But God doesn't come down and interact with people individually and directly. He lets the masters do that.
With this trying to think how to phrase this here, because going off in new direction. So with Maitreya coming back, and that was my other question I wanted to ask. Maitreya is currently doing all of these interviews and television interviews, but as under what persona, and how is he scoring interviews? What is he? Yeah. People don't know it's him yet. So how is he getting all this publicity?
Well, he plants the thought in their mind that they should include this man named whatever his name is, and then they include him in the interview. He can create that thought in the minds of people. He can set up the circumstances so that he gets interviewed. So that's how he does it. He just impresses the mind of the people setting it up, or he just appears on stage and nobody says anything and lets him participate. He's done that thousands of times. He's done that at large meetings of every major religion. Benjamin Crumb would post these when they happened. But let's say that the Lutheran Church was having a huge convention in Miami, Florida, and they had a dais of important people in the church up there, and one of them they didn't know, but one of them would be Maitreya, and then he would just share. He would talk to them for 12, 13, 14 minutes, and then he'd leave. And he was doing this to kind of soften up the real conservatives in the religions of the world. The real conservatives need to be kind of prepared for this huge, huge event. This has never happened before, where the world teacher for planet Earth has come forward as a human being to humanity. It's never happened before. This is a magnificent, wonderful. We're so privileged to be alive when this is going to happen. I mean, it's a great time to be alive, I'll tell you that. But that's how he does it. He just appears sometimes.
Well, then, so let me ask you, if he's going around and doing these interviews, then what is your part in all this?
What is what?
What is your part in this? You doing interviews and coming on our show and other shows and talking about this. If Maitreya himself is laying the groundwork out there already, it's not that I'm
Dick, you're not Maitreya, are you?
No.
Yeah.
Just want to clear that one
I was trying not to ask that question.
I just want to clear that one up.
That's okay. I know. I'll answer your question, Mark. Thank you. I'm an ordinary person who's a volunteer for this worldwide organization called Share International. There are about 4,000 of us volunteers. There aren't many of us doing radio. There's about 3 or 4 of us doing radio, as far as I know, interviews. And I'm just doing that because I made myself available to do it. I volunteered to do it because I've done a lot of public speaking, and I thought, okay, I'll do this. But Benjamin Creme was asked, here's what he was asked. He was asked to create a climate of hope and expectancy in a world that was having trouble finding any hope at all. Expectancy for the world teacher to arrive, because the more people expect him to come, the sooner he can come forward. That's just the way the laws work. So I agreed to help Benjamin Creme do that. So I can't speak at the level that Benjamin Creme spoke at by any imagination, but I can give my point of view, and other people who are doing interviews are giving their point of view. We're just helping Benjamin Creme get this information out to the world to help prepare people, so when it happens, they'll have some idea what happened, and so they'll expect it to happen, because that'll make it happen sooner. Like, one of the things I'd like to tell your listeners at some point in our interview is the 3 ways that they will know it's Maitreya when they see him on television.
Okay. Yeah. Carry on.
Should I do that now?
Yeah. How will they tell?
Okay. The first way they'll know it's him is they'll see his face they'll hear about a big worldwide press conference.
Yeah.
So if your listeners hear about a big worldwide press conference, I suggest you tune in. But even if you don't, you'll hear his words in your head telepathically. Workers in the field, as long as they're over age 14, will hear his words in their head telepathically. But the first way you'll know is you'll see his face on TV, but his lips won't move. It'll look like he's not talking, but you'll be hearing him speak inside your head in whatever your native language is. And so it'll be a strange experience, because he's not talking, but I'm hearing him. Are you hearing him? It'll be one of those kind of experiences. That's the first way. The second way you'll know it's Maitreya is that since he is the Christ, he embodies the love of God. Don't ask me how he can do that. I can't wrap my brain around that one, but he does. While he's speaking, he is going to send out the love of God into our hearts like we have never felt the love of God before. He said it will be so powerful, it will be as if I physically embrace you. There'll be a lot of people crying. I'll probably be one of them. And I always tell people, trust the love of God in your heart, because the Antichrist can't do that if you're worried about the Antichrist. And the third way you'll know it's him is that when he's done speaking for 25, 35, 45 minutes, nobody knows how long, there will be press reports from around the world that while he was speaking, hundreds of thousands of people were instantly and miraculously cured. They were healed. And in those 3 ways, you'll know that this is the world teacher. It'll be a very personal experience for everybody. He's going to say different words to people that aren't educated than the people that are educated. But he can do that. His consciousness is just unbelievable. We've never met anybody like this. And so that's how you'll know that it's him. And then everybody will make their own decision on whether they want to follow his suggestions or not.
Dick, I was looking at a website back last year of a healer who I think he was either Romanian or something like that, from one of those countries.
Yes.
And all you do is you flick onto his website. He stands there in front of the camera. He doesn't say a word. He just looks at you or looks at the camera, and you just look into his eyes. And that's how he heals. He does not mention a word. He just walks in front of the camera, stands in front of the camera for a certain period of time, and then he walks away. And people say they're healed.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Well, I have a couple of responses to that. It may be one of the masters, although I haven't heard of it. It may be one of the masters. I kind of doubt it, but it could be.
If I can find the website again, I only clicked onto it, watched it, and I thought, I don't understand this, and then that was the end of it. But if I do find it again, I'll send it to you so you can watch.
Yeah, or send it to Jason, either one of us. Yeah. But the other response is there are people who heal. I mean, that's real. Yeah. And people heal in different ways. There are people who can heal people emotionally and mentally. There are people who just heal physically. And they heal by different methods. So this could be a real healer. This could be a very evolved person who is able to reach out telepathically and energetically and heal people. And
that's the only way I think he does it. Yeah, he doesn't smile. He doesn't do anything. He just stands there.
Right. He's just sending out energy.
Yeah, and people look into it. People watch him on the camera, and they just look into his eyes, and that's it.
He's sending out healing energy. Yeah, energy is real. Thoughts are things. All of that is real energy, and so that's no doubt what he's doing. And then people are capable of healing themselves if they're inspired enough. So there might be a little bit of that going on too. But I suspect he is a real healer, even if he's not a master. Yeah. There are some powerful healers out there. And, the good ones don't charge any money, and they don't advertise themselves. Those are the real spiritual, truly evolved healers. Same thing with people that teach meditation. If they charge lots and lots of money for it, don't bother.
No, that's true.
Yeah, because people who are really spiritually advanced will teach meditation either for a very affordable fee or free of charge. Mm-hmm. And they will have been a vegetarian for at least 10 years.
I'm a vegetarian.
So am I.
Are you? Yeah. I've been a vegetarian for 30-odd years.
See, my problem is I'm a member of PETA, People for the Eating of Tasty Animals. I know that's terrible, but yeah, can't be. I'm not a vegetarian, and I don't know if I can be, but that's neither here nor there. Let me. So with Maitreya, if he shows up here in the next couple of years, makes his presence known, okay, and giving suggestions for humanity, what then? I mean, is humanity destined to change or grow up, or are we still going to be the bunch of idiots we currently are and about to destroy ourselves?
Our evolution will definitely speed up. And he said that he has a critical mass to start the changes in the process. So his first 4 priorities, I can tell you what they are because he has told us. His first 4 priorities are food for everybody, housing for everybody, education for everybody, and health care for everybody as human rights. He's going to start with the real basic stuff. See, a starving person doesn't care about God. They just want to eat. So all those things have to be taken care of. Maslow's hierarchy of needs, they all need to be taken care of before any higher education can enter into their mind and can be processed by them. So he's going to start with the basic needs of humanity. Now, Benjamin Carr's master said that once Maitreya comes forward, it'll be very fast that starvation will end. He said within 2 years of the day of declaration, there will be no more starvation on the planet.
Yeah, and
some things will happen quickly, some will take time.
And I'm a cynical person, and I admit that I'm cynical because I see human nature. And one of the things that we're dealing with right now, especially here in the U.S., is just the absolute degradation of society, where everyone is so polarizing and going towards the negative. Greed and power, struggle for power, are so ripe within not only our political institutions, but corporations, which is running the planet. And, everybody is doing things for money and power. So I'm curious to understand how somebody can come here and offering advice and getting people to change enough so that everybody gets fed, everybody gets housed. We have the tools to do that now, and nobody will do it for political and power reasons.
Yes, and greed. Yes,
yeah.
I agree. Well, the last 2,000 years, we have been close to our solar system, travels in an elliptical orbit, takes about 28,000 years, and we pass by each of the 12 great constellations in the zodiac. For the last 2,000 years, we have been close to Pisces. When that happens, we say we're in the age of whatever that constellation is. Well, at the beginning of the age of Pisces, we were sent the teacher for the age of Pisces, Jesus. That's why there's all these fish analogies in the New Testament. He fed the crowd with fish. I'll make you fishers of men. There's two symbols for Christianity, the cross and the fish. Most Christians can't tell you why it's the fish. It's because Jesus was the teacher who came to inaugurate the age of Pisces. One of the main energies we've been bombarded with for the last 2,000 years from Pisces is the energy of separation, of individuality. Man has come out of the herd. Well, now we're moving out of the influence of Pisces and into the influence of Aquarius. We're moving into the age of Aquarius. Those energies are very different, Mark. Those energies are energies of cooperation and synthesis. So now individuals are going to be working together in groups. And so that's going to change. Everything is going to change, Mark. We're entering a new energetic era on this planet where the energy won't support individuals anymore, dictators or presidents or anything like that. It will support groups. That's why people marching in the streets could save our health care, was because Aquarian energy supports groups in action. Benjamin Krem's master even went so far as to say the president of the United States will no longer be one individual. It will be a panel of wise people, because Aquarian energy supports group action. We're moving from a period of me to a period of we. We're moving from a period of you or me to you and me. We're moving from an era of competition to an era of cooperation. And those energies alone, much less the master's teachings, will give humanity the impetus and the inspiration and the energy to change. It's going to happen. Maitreya said, I see your response and I am glad. He knows ultimately what we're going to choose.
Well, I would hope so. It's just
but
that...
you make a good point. It's not going to happen overnight.
No, and it's not. Knowing the human race, we're going to go kicking and screaming. I mean, I've always been under the impression that what we actually need is another full collapse of society in order to rebuild. Well, a collapse in what way? Are we talking like post-apocalyptic kind of scenario?
No. The Earth has millions of years to go yet, according to the ageless wisdom. This is not going to be the end of the age or the end of the planet or anything like that. But here's what's happening. Piscean energy is now being withdrawn. It started to withdraw in 1625. And if you ask any astronomer, they call this the precession of the equinox, where we move from one age to the other. They have a name for it. And what's happening is Piscean energy is being withdrawn. Well, every major institution we have, education, healthcare, government, financial system, everything has been built with Piscean energy, and it's served humanity for 2,000 years. Well, now Piscean energy is being withdrawn, and they're crystallizing. All they can do is collapse. No matter how much money we throw at them, solutions, it's not going to work until we start rebuilding them with the cooperative energy of Aquarius, with cooperation and synthesis, with the best of everybody in mind, not just the best of the few in mind. And when we rebuild these institutions, then they will serve humanity again. But there's going to be a lot of changes. And the conservatives in every aspect of life, religious, financial, government, they're all going to be hanging on and fighting this. They don't want change. Whereas the new progressives and the younger generation, they can't wait for change. They see the need for change. They're going to be on board pretty quickly, a lot of them. So this is going to happen, but these institutions are collapsing right now. That's why they don't work. Our government doesn't support the people. The educational system is a disaster. The healthcare system isn't working. None of it's working. That's because it needs to be rebuilt. The energy that built them is disappearing.
Okay. Well, we've come to the end, I'm afraid.
Oh, dear.
And honestly, Dick, you have given me a lot of food for thought. Is it food for thought or thought for food? I'm not sure which
food
way
for thought.
it goes. Yeah.
Well,
I'm totally gobsmacked. And I will be laying in bed tonight when I reach London, and I will be thinking.
Yeah, keep a lookout for a master.
Well, and Dick, I just wanted to...
I've seen one.
yeah, you've already had a few come your way.
Yeah.
You can send one my way. I'd like to have a chat.
But I can't send them anywhere. They go where they want.
No, I'm telling Irene. Tell her lot to send somebody my way. Anyway.
Yeah.
Well, Dick, thank you very much for coming on, and we are definitely going to have you come back. I know there's another whole topic on UFOs that we could discuss with you. So
there's mission, yes.
Yes, and I'd like to see how, not only with UFOs, but alien races, how they fit into the universe fits into this whole scenario. So we'll definitely have you back to discuss that here in the near future. But again, thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, it's been my pleasure. Thank you so much, you guys, for having me on.
Yeah, it's been nice meeting you, Dick.
Thank you.
Okay.
Well, that was interesting. What did you think of that, Irene?
Well, it definitely gives you something to think about, doesn't it, Mark?
Well, I mean, I know some of my questions came across as pretty tough, and you know, our show, we are very respectful for all of our guests, whether we agree with them or not. And I was pretty... I have to admit, my cynical side was really coming out because I've heard a lot of people come forward with these new age ideas, this change in people. There's going to be a grand enlightenment and shifting into a new reality. And, well, I would love for that to happen, honestly. I would. But when you see how bad things keep getting, especially over here lately, it's hard to be positive, and it's hard to feel like there's going to be some miracle workers going around and convince everybody to completely stop being jerks.
Well, we don't know what's going to happen, and we don't know what's out there for us in the future.
Well, I guess we'll find out in 2 years.
2 years.
2 years. So, but we will definitely be having Dick Larson back on because he has a lot more to talk about on UFOs, which is always a subject we're very interested in. But I do want to say that we are also joined for this second hour. Andy Mercer is able to come on and join us. Hey, Andy, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm sure. I'm afraid I missed the first one, obviously, so I'll be looking forward to hearing exactly what Dick had to say. Although I actually spoke to him a few years ago on a different network, a different show some time back. So I've got a fairly good idea of what his idea and arguments and theories are. And he is, I think the word is interesting, certainly. He's very much a passionate believer in what he's saying, which is good to see in itself. But I'm sceptical as well, I must admit. I do have concerns about what he was saying, only in the sense that, for me, it doesn't quite add up, but he obviously is a great believer in what he's saying, and he may well be right. I could be talking nonsense. He could be completely correct, certainly. But I will look forward to having a listen to what you were discussing. But as I say, I have a fairly good idea about the guy from what I've discussed with him previously and read myself. So.
Well, he's definitely full of enthusiasm, and I'm just interested. The one thing I really wish I could have gotten a more clear answer on is he was saying how Maitreya was going around doing all these interviews, but yet nobody knows who he is. So how are they booking him? You know, is they these man on the street interviews, and he just happens to pop up in them? There's a lot of unanswered questions. And again, I'm not trying to take the piss out of him, and I have legitimate questions, and I think it's worth asking. So, you know, next time we have him on, we'll be able to talk to him about it in more detail. But curious of what our listeners think about this type of situation. You know, I mean, Irene, when he was talking about these ascended masters coming in and helping people, and then getting into talking about your Good Samaritan helping you and Brian get to the airport.
Yeah, that's right.
Seemed to really tickle his fancy.
Well, as soon as he started talking about that, my mind went straight to the man at the airport. Literally straight to that. You know, it all fitted. Everything fitted. And I do believe, and I said it then and I say it now, there was something very different about that person. He was as solid as me and you, or seemed to be as solid as me and you, but then there was something missing.
I've never had an experience like that. What about you, Andy? Have you ever had an experience with someone that they seem like a normal person, but then after the fact it just sticks with you and you feel like something was off?
A couple of times have come to mind, actually. You mentioned that. Yes, I have. There was a particular occasion, which is a very innocuous situation. I used to work in London in a place called the Royal Exchange, which at one point was a commodities market exchange. It's all trading in futures and options, that kind of thing. And there is a small viewing gallery that looks down from the Royal Exchange itself down into the trading floor. Now, the Royal Exchange building has been there, it's a couple of 100 years old, it's very old. And there are stories about supposedly people have seen ghosts in it, which is quite intriguing in itself. I was there just on my lunch break, basically, just sort of watching the trading floor, because it's like a building inside a building. The Royal Exchange is like a courtyard. Inside the courtyard, they built the Life Trading Centre, which is where I was working. And there was a guy standing next to me, and he looked perfectly ordinary. His clothing was quite dark. It wasn't particularly bright in this sort of viewing area. And he was looking down, and he turned and looked at me, and I swear his eyes were silver. Just very strange. And he sort of looked back again, and I thought, okay, that's different. That's unusual. So I walked out of there, and I was sitting not far away from it, finishing the rest of my lunch, because it just felt uncomfortable. It's an odd guy. Why would you wear silver contact lenses, or eyes appear to be silver? But he never emerged. He never came out of the viewing area. It was as if he was still in there, but I could see like the door. The door never moved, so no one ever left there. So he was in there for a very long time. Yeah.
Andy, now you haven't heard the interview we done with Dick, have you?
Not yet, no.
He mentioned that, didn't he, Mark? Silver eyes.
Did he?
That's interesting.
I might have missed that.
Something about the eyes. Silver eyes.
Very interesting.
I'm sure. It was something about the eyes.
Well, this guy may well have been just an ordinary person with very strange contact lenses in, but they were odd, they just looked like silver eyes. And he never, as far as I can recall, I don't remember seeing, I remember thinking afterwards those eyes were a bit on the strange side, but just carrying eating my lunch. But of course, for me, a situation where something's gone by that seems perfectly ordinary, normal, of course, was my very first ghost experience, I've spoken of many times before, where the guys seemed completely solid and real, just dressed in a very old-fashioned uniform. So, yeah. But you were saying about that one, it's come to me before, the idea of that strange guy at the Royal Exchange, and I've never mentioned it before, but yeah, that was quite an odd one, certainly.
Yeah.
There
you go. You may have met an ascended master.
Hey.
Yeah. You all who see these ghosts or ascended masters, I haven't seen nothing.
Remind me later to tell you what happened to me last night.
Well, I think as Irene and I have said before, Mark, you may well have seen something and not realised. I mean, that comes on those lines, doesn't it? That something odd happens that you almost dismiss and think, oh, no, I must have misread that or misunderstood that, or that wasn't quite what I thought it was. You may well have had an experience that you've just discounted and dismissed. As people often say, oh, why are ghosts ever seen at night in the dark, etc., etc. And our response is, well, how do you know that? Because it's in the broad daylight of an ordinary place. They might not realise what they've seen is not actually physically in front of them or beside them or walked past.
Yeah, you see it in a different light, sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly.
What a pun!
Well, yes, yeah. You're kind of expecting it when you're in the dark in an old mansion house, aren't you? But if you're walking down the road and you pass a field and there's someone standing in the field and they look again and they're not in the field anymore, maybe they just ducked down and they walked away, didn't see them. But maybe they weren't there in the first place. That is possible. So, Mark, you may well have seen something without realising.
Maybe, but, you would also think that at times something would stand out more,
No, sometimes they don't. Usually, when I see something during the day, like that time I was walking through Croydon High Street and this old man was coming towards me, all right? Normally, it's when they've gone past you, then it clicks.
But that's what I'm saying. I've never had a click moment.
That's because you don't click very well, do you? Okay.
I guess I don't.
I don't know. I think it's sort of...
Anyway, boys, I've got to tell you what happened to me. Well, actually, it wasn't last night, because last night I was travelling to London. It was the night before.
So what happened to you the night before?
Well, I got up because I wanted to go wee. right? I wanted to go to the little ladies' room. Yeah. And I got out of bed. I looked at the clock. I looked at the dog laying on the floor. So I was well awake by then. Opened the door, and you know that wow feeling you get as you go wow and you go backwards? Like you're the first step on a moving pavement at the airport or the last step coming off an escalator.
Okay.
You get that jerk back. Wow. You know, if you go wow, Mark, try it now while we're here. Just go wow, and you go back. Did you go back, Mark? Did you go back?
Well, the couch that I'm sitting on currently prevented me from going back more than an inch, but...
Oh, all right then. We'll sit forward a bit and go, wow, and your body will go back, yeah?
Wow.
Okay. Okay. I opened the door, Mark, and what I saw outside was not my landing. It was the same size landing. It was the same landing, but everything was a different colour. And it lasted just a split second, and then it was... By the time I'd wowed and gone backwards, it just changed back into my landing.
Do you feel it was a type of time slip?
Yeah, it was like something knocked me back. It wasn't the wow that knocked me back. It was something like a force knocked me back.
Because you weren't supposed to
shudder back, you know, like you'd get with a wow. That's like, it's hard to explain, people. Very hard to explain.
Okay.
That movement where your shoulders go back and the top half of your body goes back when you wow. In that split second, it changed from this landing, old-fashioned landing, to my landing.
Now, do you feel it was the same landing, just different time periods?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So
and the knockback, as I said, wow, wasn't me wowing and going back. It was like a force pushed me.
It's saying, nope, you're not supposed to enter here.
It was only a minute second. Only a minute second, but it was long enough for me to see it.
Might sound a bit strange, but are you sure you were fully awake?
I was fully awake because I walked straight out the door after that, straight in the bathroom, and then came out and got back into bed.
Oh, okay.
Oh, I hadn't even been asleep. I'd been watching, what was it on the television in the bedroom? Oh,
porn?
Christ, I was watching, I can't remember, some documentary. Oh, yeah. Francesco's Venice. I was watching about Venice, how back in the medieval times, when Attila the Hun raided across the north of Italy and killing and raping people, they fled to the lagoon, and that's when they created and built Venice. So I hadn't been asleep. I was wide awake.
Ah.
Okay.
Well, that's very interesting.
Yeah, that was not my landing outside, as it is now.
So you feel it was you would get a glimpse of something from the past, which is a little bit what we talked about last time, wasn't it?
I think I just flitted over there for a bit or something. I don't know. The walls were dingy. The woodwork was the same on the railings at the top of the stairs, but the actual landing where the doors came off was different. You know, there was a carpet, dingy-looking carpet. The walls were dingy, kind of. You know, a lot of Edwardian colours were quite... Some were nice, but some were really quite naff. And
a lot of them was quite subdued because they're like late Victorian period. Of course, it's also very much in mourning for Queen Victoria's husband. So it was common for things to be dark and dour and sort of carried on a bit further into Edwardian period soon afterwards. So, yeah, that would fit.
Yeah, it was only that split second, enough time for me to say, wow, and then the pushback, and that was it. Back to normal.
How did it feel?
Yeah, like any other time that sort of thing happens, really, to me. You know, I don't normally take any notice, but because we were talking, I knew we were going to be talking on the show today, I thought, I must remember to tell the boys that.
Yeah.
You know, but normally I wouldn't take any notice. I wouldn't even bother to mention it even to Mark unless it was something spectacular that happened. But to me, it wasn't spectacular. It was just another experience in this house.
Well, I had my own wow moment earlier when I slipped and fell down the stairs.
And I said,
that was more of an ow moment than a wow moment. I'm like, ow.
Do you know there's going to be a lot of listeners all sitting there now going, wow, just to see if they get that pushback. Wow.
Yeah, just wait. Now you've given me ideas to start the wow memes.
Oh, yeah, wow. Yeah.
Absolutely. Look back. Step back in horror. Amazing. I'm just trying to think of anything else along similar lines. I mean, in the corner of my head, there's something bugging me that fits into that kind of suddenly seeing something that's not supposed to be there moment and having that kind of experience you're talking about there, Irene. Like, oh, blimey, what's that? I remember one occasion on an investigation at a place called Coal House Fort, which is the place I had my very first experience, had a similar kind of experience walking down these corridors, which are kind of semi-underground, which are the tunnels that are used to move munitions around for the various guns in the fort. There's about 20 chambers and a corridor which you can walk along, and one of the rooms has got remains of aircraft that have been rescued from the Thames nearby, bits of World War II planes, all kind of stacked in this one room. Anyway, I was walking along with a couple of other people, and just for a moment there was a man in World War II uniform, like a pilot's uniform, standing in the doorway just looking out.
Pirates.
Air pilot, plane flying pilot.
Pirates.
Pirate Mahaji, no.
Arr.
Of a plane, aircraft, in the dark blue uniform of an RAF pilot. He was there for a second. Oh, yeah, my pilot's around as well. But no, this is a pilot. He was there for only a couple of seconds, but it was very clear and distinct, and then he was gone. And then I realised I was looking into the room that had the parts in. Of the 22 chambered rooms, this is the only one that's got all the parts they've found stored in. And he was standing in the doorway of that one. So, oh, that's good. So it wasn't like I saw the parts first, then saw him. I saw him and then the parts of the aircraft. So yeah.
It's amazing when it happens, though, isn't it, Andy? When things absolutely. Like this happen, you know, at the time you more or less don't take any notice. You just get on with life and just it's only afterwards when you start thinking about it, you think, well, that was quite, you know, a wow moment there.
Absolutely. I mean, I don't want to go on about it, but again, my first experience was exactly that. Yeah. I did for a few seconds look at those guys and thought nothing of it, and then thought, hang on, what are they doing there? And they were gone. It was that kind of thing. Like, what? That was strange. But is that why, you know, we get into this sort of stuff? Is it what is it we're looking for? I mean, there's a little question to consider for a moment or two. We know we've all been involved in investigations in one form or another. Okay, Mark, unfortunately, you've not seen anything that's really grabbed you. But what is it we're looking for? What do you think we are?
Well, most intelligent people are looking for answers. With me, I'm not looking for anything really because I'm not intelligent.
Oh, Irene.
No, you know what I mean. I just live with it. So,
but I mean, what would the question be that you're looking for answers to?
Well, that's it. Why does it happen? How does it happen? What is the reason for it? Will it happen to me? Can I walk around as a ghost? Am I a ghost in another dimension? You know, especially when I flit over. Do they see me as a ghost? Do I see them as a ghost? Or are they living? Am I living? Am I dead? Are they dead?
Well, it's one of those theories, isn't it?
Yeah.
We did talk about last time, again, this idea that these things aren't necessarily from the past or the future, but from another reality, a parallel reality that, according to the elements of quantum mechanics, may exist.
Andy, when they turn around and they look at you with the same open, wide mouth as if to say, oh, bejeebers.
Yes.
As you're doing, then they've seen you. Just the same way you said, you know.
But see, and that goes back to my age-old argument as, are you seeing a ghost of someone who's died, or are you experiencing a time slip? And you're seeing a very real, living, breathing person just like yourself. They just happen to be in another time period, and for whatever reason, the conditions are right that you're able to see each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And these time slips, Mark, they seem to be happening more and more now.
Are they, or do we notice them more?
Yeah, or we're more aware.
You know, when I can walk from one room to another, and suddenly something's different, and I think, oh, crikey.
Well, but you know what? You are who you are too, Irene. And for anybody who wants to know, be sure to get Irene's book, Life Among the Spirits, now available in paperback and Kindle.
Indeed.
Yeah. But and to answer Andy's question, I know for me, since a young age, I've always been interested in anything out of the ordinary, from ghosts, UFOs, you name it. When I first started with the paranormal, again, it's trying to prove the whole life after death thing. Some people turn to religion. Others of us look at different angles, trying to get better answers. And the one thing with the paranormal is you can actually experience things, and even capture things, some evidence of some kind, whether it's audio, visual, or even have a personal experience. But we still, for me though, I don't know, I've always had this curiosity that wants to know how things work. For me, it's not just proving that there's life or existence after death, so much
Andy,
as...
hold on a minute, Mark. Andy, he was the little boy that used to take his dad's video machine apart.
So did I.
Yeah, go on.
I was one of dismantling clocks when I was a kid, but yeah.
Go on, Mark.
Usually I was... Actually, for me, I was sticking firecrackers in my model airplanes and blowing them up and filming them. That was more along my lines. But, yeah, I've just... Especially how with my own paradigm changing over the years, I've gone from...
Don't use big words, please. Don't use big words.
Okay,
I understand the words, Mark. You carry on. It's quite
my
fine.
thoughts and beliefs changing over the years because going from traditional understanding of things, ghosts and spirits and demons and all those things that don't really exist, they're not what we think they are, to different aspects of reality. I've got this drive to understand reality, or to look past what we think is our reality right now, but it's an illusion. We tell ourselves what reality is, but we ignore the reality that's all around us, because it doesn't fit into what we've been taught, or into societal structures or religious structures. And
Andy, sometimes Mark and I, we have these really deep conversations, don't we, Mark?
Yes.
That would blow your mind, literally blow your mind.
And also occasionally when we're talking and then I suddenly realize it may not be you talking.
Shush now.
Okay,
enough with that. But
no,
yes.
I suddenly turn into somebody who's a nana like this, into someone very highly intelligent. And then he realizes that he's not talking to me. He's talking
it's probably you. It's probably your higher self coming through.
It's talking to somebody.
Or the aliens. One of the two.
Whatever.
Reality version of you, a parallel version that slipped through.
Oh, yes, I never thought of that, Mark.
Better vitamins when she was a kid and grew more brain structure.
Well, we've discussed before the times when you have had experiences of different realities, and you've experienced me in slightly different realities.
Yeah, God, Mark. Yeah.
Which the only one you've ever told me about is one where I smoke. So I don't know what the other realities are, and I don't smoke. Never could. Never could stand it. But
there's a story there, Irene. Do you want to share it?
No, not really.
Okay.
I have flitted about into other... Wow, no, people are going to think I'm bloody crazy if I start talking about...
Ari, that boat sailed long ago.
Read the book.
That boat sailed long ago. Don't worry about that.
Yeah, but we still like to talk and debate some things. You're just a normal pensioner, grandmother... grandmother.
Nobody knows how old I am. You had to let it out the bag, don't you? You had to tell everybody that I have hit 6-0. Didn't you? You had to do that, didn't you?
Yeah, well...
I've been telling everyone I'm only 39.
39, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Half of he's 39. The other half is also 39.
39 squared.
Yeah.
Hey, I'm turning double nickel here in a couple of weeks, so 55.
Oh, Lord.
I can't drive 55.
Sweetie, when you're still wearing 6-inch heels, you don't mention the P word.
Well, since I don't usually wear 6-inch heels because they hurt my feet.
Yeah.
Mm.
wouldn't be too much of a problem there.
But,
so what is it that keeps you? That was what keeps you going then, Mark, if you've not actually experienced a thing yourself. I mean, kind of just quickly say for me, it's been almost the reverse. I experience less than I used to, not less sensitive, that kind of stuff, but ghost investigations I've been on more recently, I tended to kind of find flatter, calmer, quieter than they used to be, and that kind of maybe lose interest a little bit, to be honest with you.
Well, that has happened to me too, but I complain that I've never seen anything, and I've never had it been touched or experienced anything physical like that, but I've heard things. I've heard footsteps. I've caught wonderful EVPs, and I've caught different types of anomalies that could not be explained on video. And sometimes I've gone into locations and I felt things. My skin starts to crawl a bit, or I'll get a tightness in my chest that lets me know there's some types of energy. So don't get me wrong, I've had plenty of paranormal experiences, just nothing really visual. Seeing an apparition, which is always considered the holy grail of the paranormal, but I've had a conversation once using a spirit box at a location with someone, talking about a past murder and getting some new information on it. So it's things have happened, but I'm also with you. In the last few years, things have really calmed down, and my focus has shifted. While I'm always still going to be interested in that aspect of the paranormal, the idea of time shifts, multiple dimensions, and how a lot of different types of phenomenon is more interconnected than we realize. Which would
has this only happened since you've met me, Mark? Been talking to me about these things.
Are you looking to take some credit?
Well, yes, please. Help.
A bit blatant there, are we?
Yes, I can truthfully say yes to that.
So, yes, because I seem to remember when I first met you, there you were, a radio host with an interest in ghost investigations.
Yep.
And then since then, you have evolved, you've grown, you've come more out of that into this other area, which is good.
Well, the one thing I'm still also very interested in is, the whole idea of UFOs, ufology, but from a different perspective than most ufologists or people who are looking for nuts and bolts craft from beings from Zeta Reticuli. There's
another big word, pickles.
Yeah, well, I said that on purpose. Because mockingly a bit, like most of the MUFON people, they don't get it. And there's that aspect of reality. What we think of as our three-dimensional physical reality is an illusion. It's our ideas of time are an illusion. All time, and even physics science is starting to understand this with string theory. The idea with string theory that they're counting 11 multiple dimensions, but I feel that there may be a lot more than that. They're also talking about that all time is really happening at once.
It's just that they can only count 11.
Count to 11. Here's something. 12. Anyway.
I agree with you entirely, Mark. We did, again, briefly talked about this in last week's show about the idea that these things aren't necessarily nuts and bolts spaceships. I've always said I've never believed such things exist. And those who are into UFOs, nuts and bolts from other planets, from wherever, why not from alternate realities? Why not from that? Because it's almost like it's accepted that, okay, these things are from other planets elsewhere in the universe. But hang on, that breaks the fundamental laws of physics and being able to travel at that kind of speed. There just seems to be, despite Star Trek and Star Wars, there's no way of travelling at that kind of speed. So,
well, we don't know, though, do we? We don't know how far those people have actually progressed in that.
It's not really a question of progression, because it's not. It's the fundamental physics means it's just not possible. You can't create enough energy to make that happen. But that's
their fundamental.
Yeah, that's true.
No,
See,
their intelligence only goes so far.
It doesn't quite work like that. It is the fundamental physics of how the universe works. It's not our version of it. It is the fundamental physics of the universe.
But we can't sit here and say we know everything. We don't. Look how far we've come in 100 years, but where will we...
There are certain things we can be pretty sure of. Well, my point is why would it be more bizarre that they come from alternate realities that are with us now rather than from alien planets?
Okay, but here's the same question for you, Andy.
It's a more bizarre idea. Do you know what I'm saying? It's seen as a more bizarre way of thinking about it. But why? Why would that be more bizarre than the idea they come from other planets?
But here's the thing. It's mode of travel. How are they coming from multiple realities or dimensions into our reality and dimensions? What types of physics, what types of energy are they using in order to do it? It's something we haven't discovered yet. We don't understand it.
It's more likely that we're talking about that kind of thing occurring. They're flipping across realities rather than from vast distance in space. Both are just as impossible as to understand, but we do have an understanding about the idea of speed and physics in our reality and our universe.
But there's also, and even physicists like Dr. Michio Kaku, Neil deGrasse Tyson, even Stephen Hawking, they'll talk about the idea of folded space, of idea of instead of traveling insane distances, which are hundreds of thousands of light years, is finding that folding of space to connect and do a shortcut through, which is again, it warping space and time in order to do a shortcut to go a vast distance in a blink of an eye. And it's not that they're going beyond the speed of light. They're going, I don't know the proper words because I'm definitely not a scientist, but that shortcut of and how much energy is needed to create that type of shortcut. Now, one of the things I'm going to bring up a very controversial figure here.
You do realize you've just gone right over my head. I can't even drive a car, so I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay. Yeah, they're actually starting to introduce the idea in movies like Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, or even in Stranger Things, where you take a flat piece of paper, you draw a line, and you think that the points between the beginning and ending of that line is a straight line. That's the fastest route because that's the quickest way to get from one point A to point B on that piece of paper. But yet, fold that piece of paper in half, then punch a hole from right through it. That's the shortcut. So you're not traveling the line, you're going through it shortcut.
That's kind of idea in Dune, isn't it? Frank Herbert's Dune was the idea of folding space.
Dune using the spice to fold space, but it's actually a concept that they are talking about these days. And it's, again, trying to find out how you could do it. In the movie Interstellar, which I'll give them credit, they tried to base a lot of that on real science, skirting a wormhole, but then, of course, they dealt with the whole thing of time being different. But when I was beginning to talk about a controversial figure, there's Stan Romanek, who a lot of people think he's a fake. And you know what? Yeah. That's fine, and he's had his problems. But there's one thing in his early research that I've always been intrigued by, was the fact that he used to draw these equations when he was in a trance state, or when he was asleep, and he'd wake up and he had written out these long mathematical equations. Now, this is a guy with an 8th grade math level and who's also dyslexic. And he did these equations that they had no idea what it was, and they sent it around to different scientists and universities to look at them. And these guys were scratching their heads because it wasn't gibberish. They got it. It was for some type of propulsion. And even in the drawings, there were some diagrams on the drawings showing exactly with what I'm talking about, what looked like that shortcut, going through that wormhole or going through that time, that space. And
this was quite some time ago, wasn't it?
It was about 10 years ago, I believe. It was in his first books when they first came out. And again, people say, oh, well, he faked everything. It's so easy to just blow somebody off and say, well, they faked it. Yeah. Did he fake a radio interview once, I think, for the wrong reasons? I think he did. Does that discount some of the other evidence that people have experienced things around him, seeing UFOs when he's around, seeing strange things, the equations, whatever? I think there's a lot of evidence to show that there was stuff going on around him, and I'm using this as an example, but because of some things that have happened to him that I think he made a bad choice, people throw the baby out with the bathwater. That's fine. You know what? I get it. I'm not trying to sit here and defend him.
He's had some rather serious problems since 2017, that's for sure.
Well, as far as I know, I used to be friends with he and his wife, and I haven't talked to her in a while. I don't know if he's still in the halfway house or if he's ever gotten out.
I was just going to ask you how Lisa was.
Yeah, I haven't spoken to Lisa in a while. I know she took a big.
You may not be aware of this, but he has actually been found guilty of possession of child pornography.
Yeah, well, I knew that.
How many times have we had that over here where they've planted stuff?
Yeah.
I'm not going to go down that road. I'm not going to go down that road. If he's been convicted, I'm sorry, I'm not going down this conspiracy road that he may have been planted or not. The fact of the matter is he's been found, and he's in prison because of it.
Yeah, I have my doubts on it. I'm sorry. I knew a lot more about what was going on with that case. I do believe it was planted because he's had problems in the past, including getting beat up and being beat up by the military, by the police. They've documented it. But you know what? Again, I'm not going to sit here and try to defend the guy. I'm pointing at the evidence.
Well, the fact is that he did come up with these equations.
Yes. And again, the equations is what I'm pointing at right now. The equations which have not been debunked, which people have looked at, showing this type of travel and ability to travel, and they still couldn't figure it out. They knew they could understand part of it, but they couldn't understand the whole equation. So my argument is taking a look at things like that there is so much we don't know. We don't even know what dark matter is. We theorize dark matter. We say it's
a radio station we play on.
That's true. Dark matter, dark energy. They theoretically say it's out there, but we still don't know what it is yet. There's so much with our reality again, too, with these. If we're looking at multiple dimensions, we're looking at time, our whole concept of time being wonky. And then not only with what you and I have talked about before, Irene, about multiple realities, all existing at the same time, multiple versions of us. And that's where it starts getting my head twisted around and I start to get a headache. It's one thing that when you simply think, okay, you die and you go into spirit form, then you go to heaven or you go to hell, which I don't believe in. And we keep it, and you go in that spirit level. That's one form of simplistic spiritual worldview. Then you get into, then there's reincarnation. And so you don't live just the one life, you live multiple lives, and you keep coming back and keep coming back. Cycle of return, you learn things. Even that's now fairly overly simplistic. Now there's the idea of multiple realities, all existing around us, right within arm's reach, but yet it's at a different frequency, whether it's like turning a radio station.
We just seem to go through these stages of various paranormal aspects, don't we?
Well, it's like we are learning. We're learning and growing. Yeah. So we learn that possibly if all time is happening at once, then all of our lives, past, present, and future, are all happening at once. So it's not dying and then being reborn. It's you're experiencing them all at once. And not only all your past and future lives, but multiple incarnations, multiple variations of all these lives. That could be multiple into the thousands, the millions, the billions, who knows? And that's where my brain starts to hurt. Thinking about this kind of stuff.
Me just thinking about the amount of you out there is hurting my brain, I'll tell you.
I was sitting in stunned silence at the concept, the possibility of more than one Irene.
Oh, yeah! Hey, have a party.
Just going back to what I was saying, though, I mean, that's the point I was trying to make, that it's as likely or unlikely that these things come from other planets as they come from alternate realities. The UFO community as a whole would tend to prefer the idea of other planets in our reality. You see what I'm saying? That's my main point, was there's no reason that one idea is more real or valid than the other, yet the UFO community tend to choose that one idea over the other. From people I've spoken to, obviously, I mean, I can't speak for the entire community. And of course, a few of the people we spoke to last week were probably on the same kind of wavelength of being alternate realities. Well, so it's either entirely possible.
Well, and another aspect of that, when we...
I was just asking if we could change the subject onto witches or something different now.
Give me 2 seconds, then we'll do it. We got 20 minutes left in the show, but let me go back onto this aspect, because we were talking about overlapping types of phenomena where, I know there are ghost hunters who think UFOs are BS, or UFO people in MUFON who think cryptids like Bigfoot are crap. It's and yet, it's kind of funny. I think it's pot calling the kettle black, and yet there's evidence in talking with people like Whitley Strieber. And remember, we had Whitley on the show here a few months back talking about his book, The Afterlife Connection. And
That's right.
But one of the things that always intrigued me about Whitley's case is he mentioned very early on, even in his books Communion and Transformation, that he started to feel like these visitors were somehow involved with us on a spiritual level, on recycling of souls. He encountered dead people or people who have died in his encounters. They seemed very much alive at the time, but they were dead in reality. Then you start looking at the work of Dr. John Mack, who in hypnotizing people who had some of these alien encounters, he had subjects who could remember under hypnosis being these creatures, these aliens, and coming into Earth, being born, incarnated as a human for certain purposes. So not only reincarnating as a human coming back and forth, but reincarnating or being of these other beings from other planets. Well, what about and also other universes? There seems to be in the UFO community much more involvement in us on a spiritual level and working, some races anyway, because there's obviously some races here who don't have our best interests at heart, but some working with us to help us advance in a certain way. Maybe that's what when we start talking about the people like Whitley and other witnesses who have been used in biological experiments and reproduction and the producing of hybrids, of human-alien hybrids.
God, I bet there's a few of me up there.
there are already two of me. That was enough. And then all these other multiple versions of me running around out there.
Yeah.
But again, it's an interconnectedness. You try to tell somebody that, UFOs are involved with us on a spiritual level, most people would think you're talking Satanism, satanic stuff, and they burn you at the stake because that is too frightening of a concept to deal with.
Yes. So I just wanted to clear for me, you do feel that they are here and they are involved in our world, our lives, and are having an effect?
Well, I am, yes, but...
You.
Irene has an effect on me. She usually makes me feel like smothering myself with a pillow, but...
Well, let's face it. How many times have people produced photographs, I don't know whether they're fake or not fake, where they've seen UFOs around disasters happening, earthquakes, things like that, volcanoes erupting. There's a UFO sitting above it.
You can say
maybe they are interacting with us. So.
Maybe you can say it's me being cynical, me being sort of grumpy or whatever, but I just see people finding opportunities to get fame and fortune from these
this is it.
These photographs and the videos. I mean, I love watching these top 10 ghost videos you get on Facebook.
Oh, yeah.
etc. I love them. They're just rubbish. Most of them are grainy. They're out of focus. They don't last very long. There's no information about them. And you think there's millions of these.
Let's face it, Andy. Right, it's been ruined. The whole thing has been ruined because it's so easy to fake these things.
That's the problem.
Today.
That's absolutely the problem now. I just don't take anything I see seriously, because that is the problem. And it is, we know these people will, come up with this stuff and they'll get on TV, they'll get on radio shows like us, they'll also get on commercial stuff. They'll do talks, they'll go around, they'll write books and they'll sell them because people want to believe this stuff. It's so polluted, all this now, that I've become very cynical. I'll be honest, I'll be the first to admit, I'm a right old cynic of most of this stuff now.
Well, it's very cynical because in this age of digital manipulation, everything's digital. You can do anything with a computer these days. Faking photos, faking video. For the most part, video, those videos that appear on YouTube, the faked ones are really easy to spot. And I say that as someone who has studied computer and Hollywood special effects for the last 40 years, being that I was trying to get in the film industry. So I've always understood computer effects, and I can see the difference. Usually the lighting is off, or the masking around the object or the UFO is too crisp, or it doesn't sit right with the background. There's always something that gives it away, which is why I always look at these people who try to claim the moon landing as a hoax, and the photos from space and whatnot. Oh, that was all BS. It was all models, and Stanley Kubrick filmed it. Well, Stanley Kubrick didn't film it, because if he did, he would have drove NASA crazy, because he was such a perfectionist. It would take him 3 years to make those moon landing.
He would never accepted that low quality video.
Yeah, no, he wouldn't. He never would have accepted. And it wasn't him who did it. It was, because they think they saw 2001 and how fantastic the effects. Well, look at Douglas Trumbull, who is a phenomenal special effects guy. John Dykstra, these early pioneers. I can, and I understand this, but I also understand lighting and shadows and graininess in film and how things look, and from in space. And you can go on and look at the shots of the internet. I remember
showing you a photograph once where there was a street lamp in it, and the person was standing there looking at this mist, and you turned around and said, well, see, the position of the street lamp, the position of that bloke's shadow is fake.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Remember that?
Yeah. Because that's usually how I can tell. I've had people send me photos before, and I look at them, and if I can either debunk a bug, an insect, or if somebody has faked something. Now, again, there was that one infamous time with that one stalker. Somebody just sent me that photo on Facebook, and at first glance, I looked at it, and I go, okay. This looks pretty impressive. But my whole point on it was, well, if this is real, it's fairly impressive. It turned out to be created from a phone app. Okay, fine. It was created from a phone app. Did I take that photo and put it under a microscope or run it through all these programs?
No, some tit done that instead, didn't
No,
I
just...
what you said.
No, I just looked at it and said, okay, yeah, that looks pretty cool. But... again, we're in an age where things are easier to fake now. I can usually tell, but sometimes you can't.
It's becoming ludicrously easy now, particularly with the technology as it's advanced. It really is. And so even good phone apps can create realistic images that look convincing. But I think that's become a problem. It's almost awful to say, but if it comes from somebody who's already involved in the ghost paranormal universe community, I automatically don't believe it, because it's come from that source. It needs to be someone completely outside of that world who's just happened to take this strange photograph. Then I sit up, but even then the cynic me starts sort of kicking in again, thinking, I ain't so sure about this. So it is a real problem. I think that we've ended up having to become quite guarded and cynical, because you don't want to look a fool. No one does, as you kind of alluding to there. If you stick your neck out and say, I think that might be real, then later on discover it's not, you're like a complete idiot. That's one of the problems we often face, I think, as well, with this kind of stuff, that we have to be cautious because there's a lot of fakery. We also don't want to look foolish ourselves, and so at any point really sticking your neck out and saying, yes, I believe this is real, you are taking a big chance, I think.
Well, and for me, it's this is why going and looking at other people's stuff, looking at it, watching ghost shows on TV, most which bore me to death. It's not as interesting to me as wanting to see things and have my own experiences. Now, we mentioned before that I'm coming up on a year anniversary. I think it's actually today, as a matter of fact. A year ago, I saw some strange lights here in northern New Jersey. And
you did. Yes, you did.
And, my wife and I both saw them. We were driving somewhere. They were fairly low to the ground, about 300 or 400 feet off the ground, at night, traveling in a line. There's about 15 to 20 of them, all spread out in a line, not exactly flying in formation, but they were all together. Some were flying faster than others, were moving around each other. Others were forming like little squares and whatnot. And I watched this for 3 or 4 minutes as they were flying about 40 miles an hour over across us as we were driving. And I was so mad because I wanted to pull over and get it on video, but I was caught in traffic. People were behind us. We were moving. I couldn't find a place to pull over. And then when
they were rubbernecking.
Yeah. No. Other people weren't even looking at it. It was just a busy Friday night. And then when I got to a point where I could try to pull over to look, there was too much tree cover and they would already pass by. And so I'm sitting there looking at these things. And for me, I could call them UFOs by the strictest definition. Unidentified flying objects. I have no idea what they were. But as someone who's familiar with aircraft, is familiar with aircraft running lights and, safety lights, and these things, they weren't aircraft. Definitely weren't aircraft. They were flying, first of all, too slow, too low to the ground, too many of them close together, weaving in and out of each other. They were not lanterns, these Chinese lanterns, which have become popular, because they were all flying in this straight line at 40 miles an hour in a night with no wind. And they weren't strobing like, a candle floating, strobing. These were solid orangish lights. They weren't ultralight craft. I heard no engines. I rolled down my window to listen. There were no engines. I have no idea what they were. Now, being that it's the anniversary of seeing this, I got curious. I don't know why I didn't do this at the time, but I started doing some research looking for UFO reports in New Jersey, and I found a couple of websites that record these instances. And I found 4 to 5 instances in the last few years where people have seen almost the exact same thing that I did.
Ah, intriguing.
So most of it was up here in northern New Jersey. A couple of them were further south. But other people have seen it. Now, does that explain what it is? Absolutely not. And am I looking for a rational explanation? Of course I am. I'd like to know what they are. I've talked with pilots, friends who are pilots, and asked them, and I told them what I saw and described it, and they couldn't figure out what it was I saw. They had no idea. So, who knows? I saw something.
So I can tell you a similar kind of story, actually. I was just, as you were talking about, trying to think what skybound phenomena I've seen. And there was a few incidents that actually happened in the late 1990s when I was living in London that were witnessed by quite a few different people as well. The only way you can describe it is a silver sphere just sitting in the sky, literally just hanging there. A number of times I saw these things. The very first time I saw them was when I was living in a flat in London. And I was just out in the back. I was a smoker back in those days, talking nearly 20 years ago. It was just starting to fall dusk, and we had aeroplanes who would fly over to City Airport, which was a few miles away, and of course you had a few brighter stars become visible. But there was one in particular that seemed very bright, that sort of sat there at a kind of 45-degree angle in front as I was looking, and slowly progressed over the house, over the block of flats. And it was moving far too slow to be an aeroplane. It wasn't moving in the same rate as the stars were moving, as the Earth's turning. It was moving in a different angle as well. So I stood out for about 20 minutes just watching it, thinking, what the bloody hell is that? And as it went right over the building, I went out to the back. We've got a small, like a balcony, which is standing at the back, and looked out there. And it appeared above the house and then began to move back above again. So I could see it for a little while. Then went back above the house again. So I'm looking out. I don't know what I'm doing that for. And I went back to the front, and there was no sign of it. It disappeared. In a short period of time later, and I can't tell you how long it was later, I was working at that time at St Paul's Cathedral, the big cathedral in London, and its main sort of storage area where deliveries are made, because it's also got a big business. There's a lot of staff who work down there who unpack various items, and I was out getting having a smoke and looked up, and this is over the middle of London, one of those silver spheres in the sky. Now, it was completely clear day. There was no clouds at all anywhere. I stood there, and another guy joined me having a fag as well, and looked up and said, "What is that?" I said, "I don't know, he's been there for a while." And after a good few minutes, there were about 5 or 6 of us standing there looking at this single thing just sitting there. It wasn't going anywhere. It clearly wasn't a star. It wasn't an aircraft. It literally wasn't moving. It was just a sphere. Now, I used to run my own ghost investigation team back in those days called the IOPR. And I put a little post on our website about a couple of times people had seen this and asked if anybody else had seen it. And I got about 4 or 5 reports all around the same time of the same thing, seeing a single sphere that was either moving very slowly, not against the wind or, against another movement, too slow to be an aeroplane, or would be sitting there for 15, 20 minutes. And a couple of times people said it disappeared. And I had to get back into work at St Paul's Cathedral time, so I don't know how long it stayed there for, but it was just like a ball bearing, if you like, literally just sitting in the sky, no bigger than kind of a marble, just sitting there. So the first time it moved quite slowly. One of the other reports I got was a guy who was on Highgate Hill. He'd be out walking his dog, and he watched it for about 15, 20 minutes, kind of slowly progress across the sky and then disappear. And I don't know, because I never knew the exact date, but I did wonder if maybe that was the same sight I'd seen as the thing above our flat moved very, very slowly. But that was late 1990s. Is there any time I've really had a sort of a skybound UFO type experience? But that, again, was quite strange because it didn't kind of fit with what you might expect of an ordinary UFO and sort of coming down to visit or land or whatever. It just sort of hovered there. It was very strange.
Very interesting.
Very strange.
Well, we have about 5 minutes left in the show, and Irene's going to kill us if we don't mention something about witches.
Oh, well, no, I was going to tell you about my UFO the other day.
Oh, okay. Yes. Well, we'll do witches another time then. Tell us about your UFO.
Well, the hubby was standing out the back, and he was getting on my nerves. So
it was a typical weekend.
Yeah, it was a typical weekend. He was getting on my nerves, so I threw the dustbin lid at him, and as it zoomed past, he said, "UFO, watch out!"
Ah.
So he witnessed a UFO.
I think that was...
You have really witnessed a UFO there.
Well, it was an IFO, really, because I very much identified flying object. It was a bin.
No, because I told him it wasn't off the dustbin.
Oh, okay.
Because we've got wheelie bins. Now, there you go.
Well, you do live in the UFO highway there in your valley.
Yes, we do. We do.
Yep.
But, it's been such rotten nights out there lately. You can't see anything, too much cloud cover.
Well, many nights I've been out walking and really wanted to see something. I've sort of looked at it and think, I want to see something. Give me something, anything, just some strange anomaly in the sky. Never, apart from that time with those silver spheres, and they stopped. Now, I've looked for them, but Mark, I'm a bit like you when it comes to the sort of the ghosty stuff.
Do you know something, boys? We're going to have to do this again, but next time we're going to have to talk about maybe witchcraft.
Yes, we'll talk about witchcraft next time.
Well, I have written a book about witchcraft, so I should really, yes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, no, what I'm interested in is the old witchcraft, the Pendle witches, that type of, the old wise women of those days.
That's exactly what my book's about, don't you?
Yep. We can do that.
I haven't read it.
Well, we only have about a minute left in the show here, but let's mention real quick.
What your book is. Quick.
Our new. Well, first of all, yes, Andy, tell everybody about your book real quick.
Well, perhaps we could do a show on it sometime. There you go. I'll come as a guest, actual guest.
Okay, we can do that.
Genuine witchcraft. Yeah.
So we'll do that then. And then we want to mention for everybody to listen in on Thursday nights. We have 2 brand new shows that are starting at 9 o'clock. We have actually at 10 o'clock. We have Weird at Hings with our Scots boys, and then we have Jeff
Davis.
Jeff Davis's Peculiar World is premiering tomorrow night at 11 o'clock. So definitely tune in for those.
And on the 1st of February, we have David Young's new show.
Yes, soon to be titled.
Oh, it is titled, though.
Oh, it is.
It is titled.
I just got to remember what the title is. We'll be promoting it. Definitely. And
Yeah.
so things are really growing here at the Paranormal UK Radio Network.
Steve Ward is having a new show in the very early... I've got to talk to you about that as well, Andy. Very early February.
Cool.
Okay. And there's one or two more in the pipeline as well that's coming. So in this 1 month, I think we've hit about 5 new shows, maybe with a few more sitting there waiting to come on.
Excellent. Well, we have run out of time, so we want to thank our guest Dick Larson for appearing in the first hour of the show, and Andy, thank you for joining us here in the second hour. And we'll definitely have to have you come on sometime when talking about your book in witchcraft.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sounds good to me.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody, for listening to another edition of the Paranormal UK Radio Show, the flagship show here on the Paranormal UK Radio Network. And Irene...
Yeah, he said that so that I wouldn't mess it up.
Yes, I am. So, well, here you go. Irene, where can people hear us?
Everywhere.
There we go. All right. Have a great night, everybody.
All right.
You too.
Night.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.